Hi, everyone, and welcome back. We are going directly to our next session, and I'm very excited to introduce here Nolan, who is one of the, let's say, the first people that I saw presenting and talking about data and accessibility. Let me link that back to the previous session that we had when I entered the presentation space. So for the second year, I'm very excited that we are having Nolan as a speaker, but this time he's going to be talking about tables, which I think is a challenge. It's a struggle everyone is dealing with, and we saw that even during Anne Emery's session, where everyone wanted to see her talking about tables, but we said, okay, Nolan has a separate session on that, so let's make sure we give him the time. So Nolan, hi, welcome. It's very nice to see you here for a second year.
Thank you, Eva, for having me back. And thank you all for listening to me talk for 20 minutes about a topic that admittedly is maybe not the sexiest thing in the world, but as you know, it is a necessary topic, right? Because tables, we just got to use them. Now, I do talk a lot about data visualization and charting. And when I talk about charts in the context of presentation, I always tell people to think of them like billboards. Like you want a chart in an on-screen presentation to be glanceable, right? You want to be able to look at the chart and sort of get the gist of it very, very quickly. So we talk about how to design charts to do that. For example, this is I think a pretty good glanceable chart. We took a data set, we dumped it into a scatter plot, and you get the gist pretty quickly. But if we took the same data set and put it into a table, suddenly it's not very glanceable. It's hard to pick out what's the story. And it's not the table's fault, because a table by design is referenceable, right? You can say, I kind of like refer to tables as being referenceable. You want to go back to them over and over, and you can spend some time with it. And so that's why by nature, tables are not the best thing for on-screen presentations, but again, sometimes they're necessary. And also we are still designing using PowerPoint to design print handouts and reports that need tables as well. So this is all to say that even though tables by nature are not very glanceable, there's a lot we can do to push them in that direction, to make them more readable, to make them more understandable, like in a matter of seconds by an audience. But when we're working in PowerPoint, and to a lesser extent, other slideware, we so often see things like this. And this is not much of an exaggeration, right? I mean, we've all seen things with the heavy backgrounds and the filled, cells and the heavy grid lines. And this is because PowerPoint and Microsoft traditionally has pushed people in this direction, this design direction, that when it comes to tables and PowerPoint, don't get me started. If we have time at the end, we can talk about the defaults and that awful table gallery and stuff, but this is not where we want to go. Do not look to Microsoft for your guidance on how a table should be designed and formatted, right? We don't want this. What we want to look towards are graphic designers. I'm talking about the traditional graphic designers, not even, data visualization designers, but, traditional graphic designers, when they make a table in an annual report, whether it's in print or online, they use very little, right? They're very sparing. They don't use heavy grid lines. They use very little color. There's lots of empty space, white space, to make reading comprehension better so that audiences can quickly sort of find out the information they need. So this is where we want to be inspired by, and this is what we kind of want to aspire to. Now, I'm going to give you 12 different items. This is not really sort of a linear sort of system. I don't like systems. Some of, you don't have to do all these in order, but these are 12 things in and of themselves, each of which will make a table better. So we're going to go through all of them, and different situations, will require different ones. This is my better table checklist, right? 12 items. And just like I say with slides and charts, there's no such thing as a perfect chart. I'm sorry, a perfect table. There's better and worse. And our goal should always be to look at a table and say, oh, I can use checklist item number 7 to make this table better. We always want to be pushing our content, our designs in the direction of better, right? Not worse, right? We don't want to go backwards. So the first thing is, when you're in PowerPoint, what kind of table are you going to use? There are two types. There's a PowerPoint table, and that's what traditionally most people use and you're familiar with. That's where, like, if you insert a table from scratch in PowerPoint, that's a PowerPoint table. but you can also bring in an Excel table. And then what's the difference between the two of these? Because this might be weird for some of you. Both tables, you can add rows and text and do formatting, but a table that is created in Excel has vastly more power to it, right? You can do conditional formatting, heat mapping, sorting, automatic summing. Like you change a number in PowerPoint and the sum doesn't change. You have to manually do it. There's so much more you can do in Excel, and there is a way to get all that functionality onto your PowerPoint slide. And that is by embedding the chart, okay? So here, we're gonna do a little demo here. I've got a chart in Excel. And there's a lot going on with this one. I said chart, I meant table. We've got a bunch of cells and everything. We've got a design table here. There's conditional formatting, manual formatting, spark lines, summing, data bars. So I'm just going to copy that, all right? And then I'm going to come back to PowerPoint, and I'm going to Control V, or on the Mac, Command V. And when you do that, you get initially, the default is this sort of undesigned content. But what most people do is they go down to their little, clipboard thingy here and say, keep source formatting. And when you do that, it still converts it to PowerPoint text and PowerPoint content, but it actually brings along, does a pretty good job of bringing along all that formatting. But it's just on the surface. Because look, we've lost a lot of the conditional formatting, the data bars, the spark lines and things. And if we make a change now, like let's say I make like a big change to this number, yeah, nothing happens. The heat mapping doesn't change, the sum doesn't change. So you're locked in here. But there is a way, so I'm going to delete this and I'm going to do it again because it's still on my clipboard. So I'm going to paste the same table in again, go down to my little clipboard thingy here and do Excel table, entire workbook. And that is going to bring in it's going to embed the cells, the table, just like you would embed a chart. But unlike a chart from Excel, you can't format this at all. Like you can't just go in and change the color of something. This is really locked down. In fact, it's just a preview, like a thumbnail preview. So you can distort it. Be careful, don't do that. So you've really got to do all your design in Excel. It's got to look exactly the way you want. But the advantage here is if your numbers are going to be changing, then anytime you want, just right click, go to worksheet object, open, and it opened on my other screen here. Here it is. And you open it up here. So now let me go in and change a number significantly, right? Oh, wow, lots changed. And did you see it under there? Instantaneously, let me just close this down. Boom, that all changed. So again, it's just a thumbnail, but you have to do all your edits in PowerPoint in Excel, but be aware of it because if you do need all that functionality, you might want to use an Excel table. But let's move on. That's just number one. Regardless of the kind of table we're using, let's talk about design. We're going to go through the next 11 steps. Number one step is please, please, please ditch the color. Get rid of the color. Colors for emphasis and highlighting. I don't want to see colored tables. They're really hard on the eye. Get rid of it. I know PowerPoint pushes you. They're like, yeah, let's use your brand colors. No, don't. Resist that urge. Now, I know this still looks ugly, but we're going to go through step by step making it better. So number one, or number two, to get rid of the color. Next, please get rid of those grid lines when you can. These heavy, thick grid lines are just, they're grabbing your eye's attention. They're drawing your focus, and you're not able to look at the actual data, which is the meat here. That's the heart of this table. You want to look at the numbers. You don't want to look at, this table junk, this table clutter, which is all the lines. So really try to get rid of those grid lines. You don't need them to differentiate the cells. Stay with me. We're going to show you how to do that. Next, if you want to shade, in this case, we're doing the every other row shading. That's totally fine. That's a stylistic thing. If you have a lot of rows, sometimes that really helps to guide the eye across. But if you're going to do that, don't shade dark gray, light gray. Shade light gray, nothing. Shade with a subtle hand, right? Just similar to color. We don't want these heavy sort of, fills on our cells. We want to make use of white space, empty space, negative space. In fact, you don't really need to shade every other. You don't, again, that's a stylistic thing. You don't need to do that. If you feel as though you need to do it to differentiate the rows, think about also, if you have the space, to increase the vertical white space in between rows. And the rule of thumb is no more than 1 to 1. So here we've got, one in X height, for the row, and then the space is no more than that same X height. So in this case, our columns and our rows now have enough negative or empty space to start to differentiate them. But there are times when you have lots and lots of rows and it still is hard for the eye to guide across. Do not run back to grid lines, please. If you need dividers, subtle dividers, thin gray lines every fourth, every fifth, every sixth, up to you. That will help chunk things out and guide the eye across. All right, let's talk now about the content in the cells. Text. If you have text, we have text in our first column over here. Do not center it. Either right align it or left align it. Generally, I go for left aligning. It just makes for a more clean geometric look, easy to read. Your numbers, right align your numbers. Unless you have just like a single digit or maybe two, like you can center those. But if you have long numbers like I have here, right align them. Because what that does is it just creates more order, but it also visually gives a clue. Like it says 115,000 here is much bigger than 7,000. It gives a visual clue that to people of what's bigger and what's smaller. Let's talk about all these numbers though. We want to reduce them if we can. If you can, if your content allows for it, round your numbers. And in this case, we've got all these we've got like all these cents. Who cares that Joe made an extra 31 cents in Q1? That's such a small amount, we don't care. So in this case, let's just get rid of them. Let's get rid of all the cents here after the decimal place, and it's fine. Now, your data, you have to make the decision whether rounding is appropriate or not. In some cases, it's not. Sometimes decimal places are important. But if you do it, be careful of the rounding trap. Look at William at the bottom row here, who made 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, and then suddenly his total is 200,001. That's because he had an extra 25 cents every quarter. So just what you can do a lot of things. You can put a little note saying due to rounding, totals may be incorrect, totally fine to do. You can take off the cents before you even sum everything up. That's fine as well. Let's talk about unit repetition. These are dollars. These are amounts in US dollars. You don't need them everywhere. So only the first instance, only the first row, do you need a percent sign or a dollar sign or a euro sign. Everywhere else, we're not suddenly switching to yen for Michelle. Like, we know we're still in dollars. If you have outliers or negative numbers, consider highlighting those in the table, because your audience is going to pick it out eventually, and they're going to say, wait, what? Oh, this number, I wish I'd seen that earlier, because that's cause for concern. How do we have negative numbers in sales figures? I don't know, maybe, I mean, it's possible, maybe there was some sort of clawback or something. Red, negative, parentheses, however you want to format them, but call things out that people are ultimately going to find and have questions about. Similarly, if you want to call out and highlight the leaders for every quarter and then the total, that could help this table start to be pretty usable. Like, oh, I want to find out who the best salespeople are and who the worst salespeople are. But take it further. Tables are not glanceable by nature, but we can make them more glanceable by adding a visualization. And the easiest thing to do is to add data bars to a column. And the easiest way to do this is in Excel. You can kind of do it in PowerPoint, but with a separate chart, but it's a little clunky. Once you do this, you start to see, wow, alphabetical isn't helping me here. So let's resort these, right? And now that we get these sort of data bars top to bottom, this really starts becoming a useful chart. Let me show you how these work in, this got bigger for a second. Let me open the worksheet object here in Excel, okay? And we'll take a look at how these work. So I've already got these data bars here. What I'm gonna set up another one. So I'm just gonna go to a column and say equals the number there. And then I'm gonna drag this down. Oh, I think I already had those on. So you know what, let me try this again. We'll do that. And then, so that equals that. And I'm just going to go all the way down. So every number here equals the value over here. And then I'm going to go to conditional formatting and go to data bars. People know conditional formatting, but nobody ever uses data bars, and they're really cool. Go down to solid fill, and boom, there you've got your data bars. And if you go back, if you don't like the numbers there, like I don't, you can go back and go to more rules and say show data bar only. You can change your color and shading and all sorts of stuff. click OK, and now your data bars come up. So that's exactly how I made it. And however wide the column is, that's how wide the data bars will be. So that's a super cool way to add a visualization. I'll show you, we did a P&L, 5-year P&L for a web startup a while ago, and this is what they sent us. This is what we designed. We did some table design, but then it wasn't working for me visually, so I added a visualization. I added a stacked bullet graph really at the top, which is now, for me, I'm a visual person, now I can easily see when they start making money in year 3 and how much versus the different expenses, and it's just like, this is the way we do P&Ls now. It's all tied in, and it gives a visual, but you have all your numbers. So tables can be pushed into the glanceable realm. All right, so that's tables. I think we've got about 5 minutes for Q&A, and we can talk about some other aspects, but those are my 12 steps to better tables. Eva, how's the chat been going?
Well, I think people are like, wow, that's so cool. Definitely the part with conditional formatting is not very familiar, meaning people are not using it so much, and I think it's quite underestimated, and it can help quite a lot with everything you're doing in Excel and PowerPoint. We don't have any questions here, but I have a question. So we were discussing actually with you around tables in PowerPoint, and the fact that sometimes what you're getting into PowerPoint does not really work the way you want it to be. So you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, let's talk about default tables. So, oh boy. So you have if you just insert a table, like whether it's in a placeholder or not, like just say, hey, I want to, insert, a bunch of rows. There's a default, just like there's a default shape, and you can set these, but they can only be set from the gallery, meaning your default table. Look how ugly these are. They are picking up your color palette, which I guess is their heart is in the right place. They're like, we want your tables to be on brand, but look how ugly these are. So you can and should set a default table for a file, and certainly for a template, but pick the least gross one. I usually pick one, pick one around here. Oh, did my mouse stop working? Oh, there we go. So I usually pick, oh boy, you can just see, like, I accidentally clicked that. I'm going to click this one, go back to that. So you can right click and say set as default, and you want to do that. You want to set, your default can only be, without extra coding and everything, can only be one of these. So pick the least gross one. But then generally what we'll do in a template is we'll show an example of the default, but then we'll say, but we really want your template to look like this down here. And look, this is partly a losing battle, because you're dealing with your average user. They're probably just going to go with the default one when they insert a new table. They're probably not going to take the extra steps to actually design it the way you would really like it to be designed, and it's unfortunate. And so because of that, we'll still set a default table, but we'll just give, in other cases for different templates, we'll just give multiple different versions. They're kind of all on brand. When it comes to tables, I never say your table has to look like this, like that's the rule in this company. I'm just trying to give different examples that also people can cut and paste, like, oh, I like this table, let me just cut it and insert my content, because it's just hard. It's just the way it is in tables. We've been asking for years to be able to set custom tables and do more with it, but it is what it is. Oh, Eva, I think I lost you. I'm not hearing sound.
Be hearing me now. Yeah, I was saying that
okay.
that all of the tips and tricks you shared still can be applied even to default tables, and even that's a challenge that we're all trying to overcome. That's the way it is. I'm actually very sorry that this session is shorter than the others, and we are almost out of time, because I also want to mention, and you can also help me with this one. I also want to mention the discount you are going to get on the Better Deck, and you can share more about what this thing is, because I have it here. You have also a PDF version of the Better Deck, and our colleagues are going to share that info in the chat.
So the better deck is not tables. It's all about how to design. It's 52 design solutions to bullet points, right? So nobody likes seeing bullet points. This was something we produced this recently. 52 cards, and on the back of each card are 3 examples, real world examples of how to use this technique in practice that you can steal. Just steal them and like make your own slides. So there's a physical copy, there's PDF copies, there's the PowerPoint source files. You can get them at thebetterdeckdeck.com, and I think we gave you a coupon code, right? A discount code.
Absolutely. We're going to post also the coupon code for 20% off of the Better Deck, and you can get I would say the physical version is super, super nice. Just if you have also the nerves to wait for it, because it takes a bit of time to come to Europe, but it's super, super nice, and it's quite handy if you just want to, grab a card and read from it and just take some tips and tricks from it.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for the expensive shipping to Europe, but you can get the PDF copy immediately if you want. But so that's not data, but if you don't like seeing bullet points and you're like, what do I do? This is your solution. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for, such a great session. All of these tips and tricks are recorded, so don't worry, you're going to get the recording